So we come to Unit 12, which focuses upon part 2 of the story of the interaction between Jacob and Esau. First, in chapter 26, we have the seizing the opportunity by Jacob, the deceiver, for gaining access to Esau's birthright as the firstborn of the two sons, the, again, twin sons of Isaac and Rebekah. Chapter 27, of course, that is your assignment for the translation, focuses upon the oral blessing that Jacob deceives now Isaac into thinking that he is actually Esau, his firstborn, and receives the blessing as a result of his and his mother Rebekah's conniving to deceive the elderly, nearly blind Isaac, who's able to smell a little bit and feel, but is not able to adequately see the fullness of what's going on. So Jacob, again, is called the deceiver. He will, of course, later on in our sections of Genesis patriarchal stories, as a result of his wrestling with God, God's messenger, his angel, his name will be changed to Israel. But Jacob, of course, is the manipulator, the deceiver, the cunning one of these twin brothers. But of course, we read in the New Testament as well about the way that this divine plan unfolds, even though done by deception. Another example, how God blesses and carries out his plan, even when humans are less than righteous in character. So part 1, of course, is the story of the blessing, the birthright being gained by Jacob in his manipulation of Esau. Part of the story, of course, outlines that Esau had also engaged in marriage to foreign women, over against the story that we had outlined in the divine plan of finding a bride for Isaac through their ancestral homeland, and of course, that being Rebekah. Esau would marry Hittite women and be involved in other things that were apart from the divine plan. But again, the issue of the birthright goes back to the tradition that the firstborn son of a patriarchal clan head would be a double portion of the inheritance. So, for example, if a father had 4 sons, the birthright was an extra percentage, a double portion of the inheritance. So if you had 4 sons, the family quantity of goods, the inheritance, would be divided into 5 portions, the eldest son getting 2 portions, and then the other 3 sons each receiving a single portion. So double for the oldest son, the rights, we call it, of primogeniture, the rights of the firstborn, and then the others would receive their single portion. And in this case, Esau is outmaneuvered by Jacob. Now, we know from ancient Near Eastern records that this commodity, we might call it, of a birthright was something that was marketable. And we actually have texts in the ancient Near East from places like Babylon and Nuzi of Mesopotamia, where a birthright would be sold, often in terms of quantities of cattle, sheep and goats, camels or donkeys. And so this the selling of a birthright by Esau to Jacob for a mere bowl of stew was far below the market price, but Jacob again seizes the opportunity in manipulating his brother into granting him that extra portion of the family inheritance. But that's back in chapter 26. And chapter 27, now part 2 of this story, is the oral blessing. Now, the oral blessing, like the birthright, was a special ceremony, a ceremonial handing down of the family headship, the family tradition from a father to a son. And that, of course, like the birthright, would normally accrue to the eldest son. So, again, Esau would have received the extra portion of the inheritance and also be granted headship over the family. And that headship, through an oral blessing ceremony with divine imprimatur in the process, would be a means by which, again, the eldest son would carry on the family traditions through the next generation. But here, of course, we read in the beginning of the story, somewhat innocently it starts out, that elderly Isaac is advising his son Esau. Isaac loves, the game out there of the forest and the field, and he instructs his son to go out and prepare so that they can have, again, a meal, a ceremonial meal as part of the oral blessing ceremony. It was a normal course of events that we know from ancient Near Eastern texts. This is a formal, again, conveyance of family headship that is being outlined in a simple narrative fashion. But of course, the story then backs up where we read about Rebekah's hearing of that plan, she wanting instead her son Jacob, the younger, by moments in the original birth of the two sons. And so she seizes the opportunity to manipulate her husband Isaac into pronouncing this special blessing upon Jacob. And so that's the story. Again, God's plan, as we read even in the New Testament, was to continue the blessing from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. But in this case, it happens through the deceptive work of Rebekah and her younger son, Jacob. But the divine plan unfolds in a narrative fashion in Genesis 27, which is the focus of your translation for Unit 12. So enjoy the storytelling and exploring the human relationship issues. The way that God unfolds his covenant relationship with his people is sometimes an enigma, but the divine blessing will continue from generation to generation.